reconstruction of Doyle Drive have a large impact on our neighborhoods. How do you plan on addressing the growing parking and traffic concerns? How would you integrate the Presidio's growth plan with the city? And how do you plan to work with the trust to be a facilitator for our concerns? And I'll read off the order. It's going to seem random to you, but there's a method to the madness. The first person to speak is Mark. Sorry, Mark. Surprise.
No problem. Thanks for the question. You know, when I grew up here in San Francisco and in the marina, I used to, and my dad was in the military, I used to use the Presidio not only to shop and do groceries, but also as cut-through traffic and to go up into Presidio Heights and up to Arguello. And I think the one thing over the past X number of years since the Presidio has changed hands from being an Army base that has been missing is the acknowledgement that the Presidio is part of the infrastructure and fabric of San Francisco. It always has been and always will be. A lot of the plans, what has been happening lately, certainly with Doyle Drive and the construction, and especially the traffic flow issues, is that you have the Presidio, I think, and it's frightened a lot of people in the neighborhoods here around District 2, you have the Presidio randomly shutting down, testing down routes, saying we want to avoid cut-through traffic here or cut-through traffic there. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think what's been missing lately is a true working relationship with the Presidio Trust, and I think that just develops over time, and it's something I'm very much committed to. You know, people here in this audience, for those of you who own homes or rent in and around the Presidio, you didn't move into your place with the expectations that traffic patterns would change, that an exit would be open right in front of your house. That's not part of it. And I believe we need to work with not only the residents, but the people within the Presidio Trust to ensure, from my point of view, that the Presidio Trust understands and realizes that it is part of the fabric and infrastructure of not only San Francisco, but in particular the residents of District 2. And they need to keep that very much in mind as they go ahead and adjust, develop both commercial districts and traffic flow patterns within the Presidio.
Thank you, Mark. Let me just tell you the order so you can all be prepared. It's Mark, Vilma, Abraham, Barbara, Janet, Kat. So Vilma?
I have a very, very deep love for the Presidio. My husband was in the United States Navy for 20 years, retired, and my grandparents will also serve the military. My father was in the United States Army during the war, and we used to walk from my house on Jackson Street to Presidio. That was our daily exercise regimen. And we remembered playing around the park when we were young children, and it was a joy to behold. And in the most recent years, after we had been granted the opportunity to keep it as a San Francisco place to enjoy, I would like to see some of our seniors enjoy the privilege of having to live in there. It's a very, very expensive place to live, and not only that, we need some, they build affordable housing everywhere and anywhere in the city, but none in the Presidio or District 2 areas. And most of the people that live in this district are the most privileged in all of the city. So what I'm trying to say is that for the people that cannot afford, like where I live, they could afford to live there. However, I'd like to see a section of the Presidio to be built for senior citizens and a playground for the children that are to be the future of our city. Also, last but not least, I'd like to see more friendly with the security that used to be there during the military years. And I thank you for listening once again. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Vilma. Abraham?
As an assistant United States attorney, I am intimately familiar with a number of the issues that go on in the Presidio. I will tell you I have two major concerns with that area. The first major concern, we in San Francisco, who are not part of that federal bureaucracy, do not exercise enough influence and do not communicate enough of what we care about so that we can show them better ways to build, better ways to work with their environmental problems and that sort of thing. Number two, we have completely forgotten that precincts number 3200 and 3201, those are San Francisco residents. Those are people that we should be representing. Those are people that have problems. And if you think we get late notice about when they're going to start construction, you should see what happens to our neighbors in the Presidio. They do it without any sort of notification. They get notice after we do. We have at least the Neighborhood Association of Presidio Planners that from time to time communicates with the Presidio. But as just a resident, those guys, we really need to do a much better job of representing them. Here's my plan. Why not lobby to have a resident on the Presidio Trust? Why not lobby to have some representation where we can communicate with someone who's going to communicate with them? That's an idea. We should also be working harder to make sure we have someone from inside the supervisor's office that communicates regularly with the Presidio Trust. Now, they are a separate federal entity, but they will bend, and we have all kinds of tools at our disposal that we know and they know they don't want to use, and it should not be a relationship that's one that's not collaborative. I think that they really do listen and really do care when it's in their interest to do so. We just have to show them sometimes a little bit more how it's in their best interest to cooperate with us. It's that simple. This is not a job, though, where I think we can afford to have people learning about the Presidio Trust and learning about what's in the budget book. I think what we need is real experience and someone who's interested in real reform. I'm going to be saying that a lot tonight, and I hope you're all listening and really paying attention. This is not a job where you want to learn about all these things. Thanks.
Thank you. Barbara?
The phrase that comes to mind for me most when considering the Presidio is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. We have $1 billion project at Doyle Drive that's going just fine. I was just on the phone this morning with a man who would be my primary contact, and his name is Lee Sage, and he was telling me about the project, and he's worked on other projects. And I said, what kind of complaints do you get? And he says, well, we don't really get a lot of complaints. Everything seems to be going fine. And I says, well, if you had a complaint, would you go to the supervisor board with it if you need to? And he says, yeah. And I said, if I have a complaint because someone's complaining to me, you can be my go-to guy to kind of deal with whatever's coming up. He said, sure, I'd love to. We're looking at a 2014 completion date. Everything seems to be going just fine. We're taking those narrow lanes, we're going to make them wider. We have so much to preserve the Presidio. We have Baker Beach, which is just fine. We have the World War II battlements, which is, if you're a child or you're a parent taking your child over there, it's a wonderful thing to review the history of San Francisco with respect to World War II and have them see what our forefathers built. In the absence of complaints, and I've met a lot of people, and no one seems to think there's anything wrong. So my position on the Presidio is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Thank you.
Janet?
Well, the Presidio is definitely not an island unto itself. It is surrounded on all sides by District 2. So anything that happens in the Presidio directly affects this district and the neighborhoods. I think that since the Fisher Museum issue has ended, there has been much better communication between the neighborhoods, which really mobilized against that museum and did an excellent job, and the Presidio. The communications have gone much better. As a matter of fact, I know that there's a draft programmatic agreement which is being overseen. I know Lori sits on that board, NAP, all the neighborhood organizations, the Sierra Club, various nonprofits, the Conservancy, and they meet regularly to go over what the plans are for the Presidio. And so the communication has got to remain strong. We're talking about a lodge, a theater, talking about renovations to the Capitol, and the main parade grounds, which I think is what we really have to pay attention to. That is where the core of the activities in the Presidio will take place. I think that the development of the Presidio has to do two things. One, it has to include neighborhood-serving businesses and entities. Things like the bowling alley. I mean, I think the bowling alley is incredibly important to the District 2 neighborhoods. We use it all the time. It's a fantastic place where families can go during the weekends and on the evenings. It's terrific, and we should try to preserve things like the bowling alley. So neighborhood-serving entities, the gymnastics studio, really important, as well as bringing tourists there, like the Disney Family Museum. We must also be very cognizant of keeping and preserving as much of the history of the Presidio as possible. And so keeping those buildings and making sure that the Presidio is really offers a learning experience for the history of San Francisco in that area. So being vigilant with our communications and really being in touch with the Presidio at all times is absolutely imperative. And as supervisor, I would love to be involved in that, convene meetings, and really keep the community informed on a regular basis.
Thank you. Kat.
I think the Presidio is one of the most exciting places to visit in San Francisco. You can do anything there. You can walk, you can stroll, you can ride your bike, you can roll on roller skates, you can take your dog. It doesn't matter what age you are. There's something for everyone there. It has become quite a magnet of activity, and I think that's to be expected with the renovation of the whole Chrissy field and beach and the marshlands there and all the new centers that have been built. They want people to come. So I think on a real practical level, the way that we deal with the traffic concerns is we make sure that all the stakeholders are at the table. So for example, you're going to have the Board of Supervisors and people from the Mayor's office, as well as our County Transportation Authority and MUNI, MTA, Department of Parking and Traffic, working with the Presidio Trust. You're going to have to include the residents of the Presidio, and they do have their own little association. And I personally would activate NAP. NAP is the Neighborhood Associations for Presidio Planning, and they've been integral in the new programmatic agreement that's going to be spotlighted tomorrow night and the night after, and there's going to be a vote at the end of the month. You have to keep them at the table, and they have done an amazing job with creating a relationship between San Francisco and the Presidio Trust. And remember, members of the Presidio Trust are San Franciscans, many of whom live right around the Presidio, if not in the Presidio. And they're stakeholders too. They're going to want these things to be addressed. And for some other specific ideas, we're going to have satellite parking areas in the Presidio, and there'll be shuttles running us from place to place. There's a lot of businesses down along the Green, and they're going to be having more businesses spring up along with the Disney Museum and the other things that are there. And another idea is to have a parking structure underneath the existing parade grounds. And an idea that I am talking about all over the city is having a bike share program where you can go and borrow a bike for the day, and so you can take Muni to the Presidio, ride your bike around, and you don't even have to get in your car if you don't want to. Thanks.
Thank you, Kat.